Good morning, sons and daughters, and welcome to The Gap. Can you believe it? Less than 2 weeks to go before Christmas Day. What a crazy, crazy year. And today's message is about not giving up. And for many of us, I'll say the majority, January the 1st this year, 2020, how many of us had all these great hopes, dreams, new decade, new year, new hopes? And then by February, we realised that there was going to be a dramatic shift in our worlds. And many people have been saying, I just want 2020 out of the way. But the message today is don't give up. You've still got more than 2 weeks left of the year and you're alive. And that is a reason, if nothing else, to be positive, hopeful. You are alive. You can still make a difference. And unfortunately, some of us have lost loved ones this year due to illnesses or even COVID, and they want you to live. So I really hope and pray that this message will encourage you and inspire you that you still have a reason to be joyful for this year. And that's the title. Don't give up, because joy is around the corner. Now, joy is an interesting word because we very rarely use it. When I speak to people and say, what do you want from life? They normally say, I want to be happy. And happy can mean so many different things to different people. So I then ask them, well, define or show what happiness means to you. And when you unpack it, often happiness for many of us means no pain, everyone living together, no disagreements, and in a career that you enjoy, married to the person you want to be with, and children who never disappoint you. And that's most people's view of happiness. So often we get a glimpse of happiness when we have that week holiday during the year, or the 2 weeks if we're fortunate, and we think, right, we can just let everything go, and this is happiness, where there's essentially no worry. So most people's happiness is where you have nothing to worry about. And holidays are peculiar things because it takes us time, doesn't it, to wind down. And after 3, 4 days, you start, evaporating all the thoughts of day-to-day life removes. And then it starts building up again because you're preparing to go back home and to normal day-to-day. So really, you need more than definitely 1 week, and even more than 2 weeks to really have that space where you can say, I'm in a place of no worry. And with joy, we can see the joy where it's that inner feeling. And I researched the word, and it comes from the Greek word charis, chara, which means gift. And when you look at the word chara, it's related to the word meaning life. So joy, when I looked at it essentially means what makes you alive, what gives you life, what brings purpose to your being. And with joy, it's that moment whereby you just cannot describe it, it brings you joy. It's an inner deepness of, it's beyond happiness. You can't always describe it, but it's the closest I can get is the birth of all three of our children, where that you've never experienced joy like it. It's like, wow, it's beyond words. And that joy may be similar to you, or it could be a different joy. It could be finding your purpose, your career, your partner, or whatever it is, but it's that joy, what makes you alive, what gives meaning to your life. And so many of us are desperately looking for what gives meaning to our life. And that's what often the reason why we feel like giving up, because we just say, what is the reason? I can't find joy. There's very little joy in my life. And I shared this early in the year when every summer I speak to year 10s who are prepared to go into, well, year 10s, I'm thinking of my old days, year 6 who are prepared to go to year 7 at school. And I do anger management with them, and we looked at the film Inside Out, which is a few years old now. And do you remember the characters? I'm going to try and recall them from memory. There's anger, I always remember anger. There's disgust, there's sad, there's, it's not sorrow, there's joy, and I'm missing one. It will come to me. Yeah, there's disgust, there's anger, there's sadness, there's joy, and there's fear. Yeah, how can I forget fear? And there's fear. So I was asking the guys, I said, right, who's your favourite character? And who's the most popular one? Anger. I was like, what? I said, yeah, anger, because he's funny. Who didn't get any votes whatsoever? Joy. Joy didn't get any votes. Yeah, if you've seen the film, you know that when you take joy out of it, rejoice with, it's chaos. But for the kids that are watching it, joy did not appeal to them. Yet, we're all deep inside looking for joy. So there's a conundrum. And with today, so joy is about that purpose. Why? Because all of us are searching for a reason to be alive. And just think about you. When you were born, you brought joy into somebody's life. Whether it was your mum, your dad, or even the midwife, you were a joy. Just seeing that little baby cuddled up, crying, you brought joy to somebody's life. So you are joy. And then as babies, we grow up, we then go looking for joy inside our lives. And in the Bible, it tells us there's so many references to joy, and too many to name them all, but I picked out the key ones that I thought would be relevant for today, 2020. And in the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 13, verse 44, Jesus shared a parable, and in chapter 13, he talks about describing what the kingdom of heaven is like. And he says, the kingdom of heaven is like a treasure hidden in a field. And he says, which a man finds and covers up. And he says, then in his joy, he goes and sells all that he has and buys that field. So I'll say it again. He says, the kingdom of heaven, and remember we've been speaking about the kingdom of heaven, that it's whatever goes on in heaven happens on earth. It's God's colonization on earth as it is in heaven. So he's saying, this is what the kingdom of heaven's like. And he says, it's like a treasure hidden in a field. It means not everybody realizes it or finds it, but it is a treasure. So think about your treasure right now. What gives you purpose? What would you consider to be of most value to you? And he says, this man finds it. And then in his joy, he covers it up first. In his joy, he goes and sells all that he has in order to buy this field that contains this treasure. So let's go through this process. It is hidden. Your joy is hidden. And where's it hidden? It's hidden inside of you. And we'll desperately go looking for it elsewhere. But that joy that gives you life and purpose, that is worthwhile, is inside of you. And what happens to him? He finds it. So we're on a discovery for birth. We're looking for this joy. And even though I said my joy are my children, when Mia was born and then Carrie's in care, it was just like, words can't describe it. And if you're a parent and you experience that, you know exactly what I mean. But still, there's a hidden joy that is even I'm still looking to find. Because even though our children mean the world to us, they will grow up and leave. There's still an inner being where you think, but what's my joy? What's that inner deep joy? And this man stumbles upon it and he finds it. And he's like, this treasure, wow, this treasure. And when he finds it, it's like, right, this is going to cost me. But it doesn't feel like a cost because it says in his joy, he goes and he sells all he has in order to purchase this field that contains this treasure. Now, going back to my children, when you have a child, you think your life is no longer about you. I will sacrifice everything for my girls in order for them to have it. When you find this treasure, it's like the cost doesn't even seem like a cost because it's what gives you life. It gives you meaning. It gives you purpose. That carrot, life, joy, that joy that's not governed by circumstances because it comes from within you. You found it. And you think of that man in his joy, he finds this treasure. So he's walking on and his stomach's like, my word. And there's no hesitation, there's no thinking, I'm going to sell all I've got. And look closer for an example, when Sarah found out she was pregnant, and then I was in a good job, but I quit that job. And in my joy, I just thought, I want to do all I can for this child I'm about to have. And the cost didn't matter to me, how soon I was going to find another job. It was like, I'm going to sell everything in order to prepare the best for our first child. And in his joy, it's like, I'm setting up everything because this is a treasure that I have found. What is the treasure that you are looking for that is inside you, that you're continually discovering? on that journey to discovery where it makes you think, I just want to give up because I cannot find this treasure. I cannot find this life. Well, when we look at Jesus, Jesus represents that man, that treasure who gives up all he has for the joy that he's carrying. Jesus left the realm of heaven. It tells us in Philippians 2 how he gave up everything. He emptied himself. So all his glory, if you can imagine Queen Elizabeth giving up her crown, her monarchy, everything, to come and live among you. It's not conceivable. But this is what Jesus did. However you imagine heaven to be and multiply it, it's far greater than that, and Jesus left it. Why? Because he left it for the treasure, for that hidden treasure in this field called earth. And who is that treasure? That treasure is you. That treasure is you. That treasure is me. It is you and I. And what was the cost? Well, the cost was to sell everything. Ultimately, himself, he gave himself up and became a human being like you and I. So where we're searching to go, where the whole world's like, I want to go to heaven, he left that place and came for you. The Queen leaving her palace to come and find you. And that is also illustrated in Luke chapter 11, where the religious people, that's why I say the Bible is not about religion. We just put it in religion because it's a comfortable place to put it. But Jesus always spoke about a kingdom, and his greatest opposition were religious people. So he speaks to the Pharisees and the scribes and the main religious people of the day. Well, they're attacking him because they're thinking, why does he want these common people, these sinners, these lowlifes? We're the high, mighty religious people in our robes, but Jesus mixes with the common people. And Jesus says to them, you hypocrites, he does say hypocrites, I'm adding that. And he says, how many of you, if you lost your sheep, had 100 sheep and you lost one, would not go off to find that lost sheep? And he says, when you find that lost sheep, in your joy you'll come back and you'll be telling all your friends. And that's how you can have an idea of what your treasure is. How many of you have lost something that has been valuable? Whether it's an important document, and you'll turn up the whole house because you can't find that passport, or you can't find that piece of paper that you need. Or is it a human being? So hands up, parents. How many of you have lost your child in a park? I've done it on more than one occasion. And the most fearful time was when we was in America, in Disney World. And we were there with our parents and we was walking on, chatting. And then suddenly, I think Sarah said, where's Mia? And you turn back and we couldn't see Mia. And if you've been there, you know what it's like, that sudden pain. And you're like, what? Pain, panic, emotion. And you're thinking there's hundreds of people and you're thinking, we've lost Mia. And fortunately, within a few minutes, because Mia just stood where we left her, we found her. And that joy where you just grab her and you hold her and you squeeze her because you've lost something that's valuable to you. And I'm sorry to say that's not the only time I've lost one of my children. I've done it in a park with the twins. But that panic, and that's how you know it's valuable. How many of you have lost something, or you've lost that career, or you've lost that husband or wife or that child? And that pain, because that pain of joy, or live side by side. So if it gives you joy, it's also going to give you pain. But the joy outweighs the pain. And that's why Jesus says in Hebrews 12:2, because you and I are his joy. He said, for the joy, if you remove the word joy and put your name, for you that was set before him, for the joy that was set before him, he endured the cross. He endured the pain. So what does that mean in everyday life? Well, once again, I return to having a baby. Now, having a baby physically is something I would never experience on this earth. But women don't stop having babies, do they? But yet they know they're going to have pain. You women experience pain every month through the menstrual cycle, but it doesn't stop you from desiring to have a child. Even though you may hear the horror stories, some people have more than 24 hours labour, but because of the joy set before you, you will go through that pain. And it tells that in John 16, verses 21 and 22. Because of the joy, because of the vision of having a new baby boy or girl, you will enjoy that pain. You may kick and scream and curse and put out all profanities out there, but you're still thinking of that joy. And when you're then handled, that little human being, it says you forget about the pain because of that new birth that you're holding. And that is Jesus. When he went to the cross for you and I, his eyes were set on you. His eyes were set on you, thinking, when I hold you, when you come into my kingdom, I'm not going to remember the cross. It's all worth it because you are my treasure. You are my life. You are my carrot. You are the reason why I came to earth. You are my joy. And in my joy, I took that suffering, I took the cross, I took the abuse, I took the pain, I took everything because I just kept thinking about holding you. You were the joy set before me. And that's why I didn't quit. That's why I didn't give up, because I knew that joy was going to be around the corner. Think about the joy you have in your life, but then if you had quit before, or if you said, oh, I'll give up now, and yet it was literally around the corner. I don't have the words to tell you how much Jesus loves you, how much you are his joy. Not the things around, not the gifts that you're going to buy at Christmas. This is the ultimate gift. You will always be Jesus' joy. He can't find any other joy in the shops out there, in TK Maxx or Amazon or anything like that. You are his joy. You are. He delivered you to this earth to represent him, to be his joy. That hidden treasure is inside of you. So it's up to you whether you want to find it. And then when you find it, it's like, how much do you value it? And you know the value you place on something is, are you prepared to die for it? But I can hand up say, I'm prepared to die for my children. Jesus is not prepared. Jesus did it. He died for you and I. See, if you ever question how valuable you are, just remember the cross. He didn't do it for some. He did it for the world, past, present, and future. That's how valuable you are to Jesus. And he didn't do it because, oh, I'm going to hold this against you and you owe me this. He did it because of the joy. He left his sacrifice was to leave his realm of glory, heaven, to come and find you, his hidden treasure. You are Jesus' treasure. There is a song I used to listen to in my garage days, and it's called Joy. And the lyrics is all about joy because that's the title of the song. And at the end it says, I can't keep it inside. I've got to tell the world about it. And that's when you get that joy. Going back to babies again, when you find out that a loved one or someone you know is pregnant, you can't keep it in because it's joyful news. Such and such is going to have a baby, such and such is pregnant. You cannot keep it in. When you find that that career you're after, or that new job, or whatever it is, you find it hard. You go to that person, I've got some great news, but please don't tell anyone. And then they say the same thing to somebody else. I've got some great news, please don't tell anyone. You can't keep that joy in, it comes out. People having babies, I said this last week, every second of the day, regardless of the circumstances around them, but it doesn't stop that joy, that moment when you're looking into that baby's eyes. Well, the Bible tells us, doesn't it, in Jeremiah 1:5, before you were conceived in your mother's womb, I knew you. I had that joy before your mum and dad even stumbled across you, before they found you in that hidden treasure in your mum's womb. I already knew you. And that's what Jesus said, I knew you. And that's why you are my treasure. Because I knew you before you were even visible on this earth. So for Jesus' joy that was set before him, that joy being you, he endured the pain. Now this has been a hard year, and we're all going through some form of struggles or challenges. I am, you are. But it's the joy that keeps us going. What is the joy that you're placing before you? That you say, no matter what, I'm not going to give up because of that joy. Well, that was a question I had to ask myself this week. What is my joy? my real joy? Well, I guess my real joy is for people to be in the kingdom of heaven, for people to be saved by Jesus Christ. That is the real joy, because I don't want anyone going to hell. I don't want anyone being deceived as I was deceived for so many years of my life. I don't want to be in this place called heaven where my loved ones are not there, where my friends are not there. But even beyond that, I don't want anyone being outside of God, no matter what you've done, no matter what I've done, because it's not a nice place. It's not a nice place to be. And also because it's impossible to have real joy without the source of joy. See, if we're going to live eternity outside of God, that means living forever without joy, without the meaning and purpose of life. And I don't want that for anybody. So I may not see the fruition of joy on this earth, but I'm hoping afterwards that the joy will be realised, and that will be the joy that I see. That the ultimate joy is seeing Jesus Christ and him looking at me and saying, Gary, you are my treasure. That is the ultimate joy. Because as I said last week, first and foremost, I am a son. And to be looking at Jesus and my Father and him just embrace me and saying, you are my son, you are my treasure. I can't think of a joy that would top that. I really can't. My children will never know how much I love them until they have their own children. And I say, you can't imagine that love. And when we play our love games, I love you more, no, I love you more. I always say, I love you first. And they can't beat that. Well, in 1 John 4, it tells us we love him because he first loved us. He first loved you before we even knew anything about love. In his joy, he created you. In his joy, he created me. In his joy, he sacrificed and died for you and died for me. And in his joy, he rose again 3 days later and lived for you. So let's not lose the Christ in Christmas. It's great to get together as families. I know this year is going to be more difficult due to COVID. But the real meaning is about this gift, this hidden treasure, this treasure that came to find his treasure, which is you and I. That is the real joy. That's what it's really all about. Very briefly, can you imagine a winter period with no Christmas? Whether you believe or not, everybody participates in Christmas because it brings that light in that darkness in that winter period. It's something to look forward to. And it should be a joyous occasion. Well, imagine if there was no Christmas and we just had to go from October, November, right through to April. How lonely would that be? How joyless would that be? Well, that is life without Jesus. We can try, we can strive. But until we find that treasure that makes us sacrifice everything, and in his joy, he went and sold everything. In your joy, you will do whatever it can to keep and look after that treasure because it's of value. You are his treasure. It can't come any more simple than that. Be joyful in that. Have a great Christmas.